at one of the bigger SAS conferences that went through all 80 functions of SAS in 40 minutes. So I thought that was a kind of a neat format, so I wanted to see if I could replicate it. And so I was like, oh, I can do pseudo because I know pretty much all there is to know about it. And then as I was preparing the talk, I realized I didn't know as much as I thought I did. So hopefully that will be the case for you as well. I tried to structure the talk in a format so whether you're a beginner or you've been doing this for over 15 years, you can come away with hopefully at least one thing that you didn't know before. This is the first time I've given this talk, so any feedback, positive or negative, is super appreciated. You can either find me on Twitter at @Kivikoski, or you can email me, mikekivikoski@gmail.com. All right, and so before we get in, I just want to serve a warning. These examples are examples, right? They may not be the best use cases to put in your application or products to achieve performance, maintainability, specificity, or accessibility reasons. These things are good to know in case. Is that me? Is that me? No. How do you shut this off?
The bottom, right on the bottom.
Aliens. Not worth it. Okay. Thanks. Blah, 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 blah. This stuff's good to know, just so you have it in your back pocket. So when you come across instances where you can't access the HTML to put in classes, whether it's a CMS or it's an iframe, or you're stuck in some other situation, it's just nice to have this stuff in the back of your back pocket. All right, classes versus elements. A pseudo-class is a selector that assists in the selection of something that cannot be expressed by a simple selector. For example, hover. And then a pseudo-element allows us to create items that don't normally exist within the document tree. The syntax of classes with 1 colon and elements with 2 colons is just for a visual distinction in CSS3. Elements will still work with just 1 colon. And if you have to support IE, you should use 1 colon because it doesn't recognize the 2. There's a lot more classes than there are elements, and throughout this presentation, the classes and elements are styled in this syntax, but just so you know. All right, so let's begin. Start with some easy stuff that probably most people know. So link gives you styles applied on links that a user has not visited. So that is something where the user hasn't gone to that page or product yet. And so you can set that for your entire site. And then you would overwrite that with visited. And so I believe years ago you would use link instead of visited because visited had some spotty browser support, but these days you should be fine. You have hover. So that's when a user hovers over an actual element with a mouse or another touch device. Focus is when styles are applied because an element has received focus from a keyboard, mouse, or another touch device. And so this could be links or it could be form input elements. For this example, we're doing an anchor. So if you had this CSS, if you had that markup, and then you tab through, you can see that by default browsers give it an outline, but then you can also style its colors. For this example, I just did colors. For accessibility purposes, you probably want to remove or change the text decoration as well. And then just to make life easier, you typically want your focus and your hover to have somewhat of the same effect because people will tab through the site or people can hover through, so it helps with some accessibility. Your active is styles applied when the user activates an element, so when they click. So this is buttons, buttons and links. So it allows the page to give feedback that the browser has done something. So when they click. All right, and if you want to remember the order, so love hate is a nice acronym. So link, visited, hover, and focus. And active. So active will override hover, hover will override visited, visited will override link. Any questions on that? Great. Yeah?
What do you mean there's a specific order?
So, like the styles for active will override styles that you've set for cover.
So, override in what way?
If you do active color blue and hover cover red, and then when you activate it, it'll turn color blue.
So if I put the if I have two separate rules and I put the active before the hover, you're saying it will still be blue?
No, you have to put active after. So this is the.
But what if I put it before? What happens?
You're crushing me. I don't actually know. It might pick up the. I don't know.
They have the same specificity, so it's depending on the order.
Okay. You're crushing me.
It depends on the browser. So different browsers will have different rules. So if you're violating the order, of course, it could or it could not.
I think there were some issues in old IE where you have to maintain a specific order, but not anymore.
Cool. So content, so you have lang for language, and so this will be styles applied with elements based on the language that you've set. And so you can do it on the entire page with just lang, or you can do it in specific selectors. So if you have a page full of English, but then you need a breakout for Spanish or something else, you can set the language on that specific element. And so the shortcodes for EN and Spanish, so this would be with language English defined, and although this is not Spanish, this is what it would look like if Spanish was defined. You have after, so this matches a virtual last child of a selected element. And so in this case, you could do like div after content, you're great. So your actual HTML markup is just hello there, but then your rendered is hello there, you're great. And as we go into this, I've tried to color the selectors, or our classes and elements, yellow, and then what elements they affect yellow as well, so you can start to see a visual relationship, hopefully. I think I did it on every slide. If you catch it, please make a note and let me know. Putting actual content within your CSS is typically not recommended. While this is still not super great, this is a better solution by putting it in a data attribute, because then you're leaving your content with your content, and then you could do some accessibility practices to make it available to screen readers, and then it's also easier if you ever have to translate or whatnot. So you could use your content to pull in the attribute of data complement. So the complement part is just what I created. It can be anything that you want it to be, and then that still gives you the same result. You can also use after to do icons or links or other content. So if you had links that went to sites outside of your own, and you wanted to give that to your user, you could use like a class of external, or you could do the attribute target blank, and then after that you give them this content of the arrow, and then that would, in theory, style your external links throughout your site. You could also do things for tooltips, icons. So you could do some pretty in-depth CSS gradients and stuff to try and get some logos. And then there's a whole world. These examples are simplified, but hopefully practical for the most part. So before matches a virtual first child. So after is the last one, before is your first one. And that could be if you wanted to change the list items from blocks to pizza emoticons, or you could use icons, or you could use it to do quotes and block quotes or other set of quotes, and then set that properly so it sits in the margin. First letter or styles are applied to the first letter of that specific element. So in this case, if we were using some bacon ipsum, it would be within this paragraph tag, it would be our B. You can see it targets the first letter in each of those paragraphs. First line does a very similar thing, where the styles are applied to the first line of the element. And so if we had P first line font variant, it's going to target our first line, such as so. But what's nice about this is that it's also responsive, so that it stays in the first line depending upon the viewport. So no longer are there the days when you had to wrap spans around a specific amount of letters, and then that's kind of what you got stuck with. This allows you to do it across any of the devices. Selection, so styles are applied to elements that have been highlighted with a mouse or another pointer device. When you do this, be careful of your background color and your text color for color contrasts for any accessibility purposes. And then you can apply this either site-wide or you can apply it to specific elements. So in this case, if we were doing a paragraph, it allows you to change color, background color. I'm not sure what other style there is. In the bottom right, you'll see I have CodePen URLs. So I made all these in CodePens and then took GIFs. We'll be posting the slides to the Meetup channel, and then I'll tweet it as well. So you can go and play around with the CodePens. Selection has, I guess, somewhat shoddy support in iOS Safari and Opera Mini and IE8, but otherwise it seems to be pretty good, so just be aware of that. Negation, so that's our not class. So it's a pseudo class accepting a simple selector as an argument, and then when that argument proves to be true, it's applied. So in this case, we could do not active, so a CSS class, and we can do not last child, which is a pseudo class I'll talk about. And so if we had these applied to a list item, so it might make sense if we have styles applied to our LI and then we're changing the color on active, we may want to change that color on active or change the color on the other ones. And then if we have borders set on them, we may want to remove the border on the last one, or not remove it, but actually never apply it. You can use not and after, and you can chain not. So taking the external, the icon for external websites example. So instead of relying on someone putting class of external or someone doing target blank, we could actually look for the href value, that it doesn't include your domain, that it doesn't include the hashtag or the fragmented identifier, or that it's an internal link somewhere. So it's anchor, not your inside or not interior. So afterwards we can give them the arrow. So this bulletproofs your URLs a little bit better. Forms. So checked, it applies to a radio checkbox or option that is checked to an on state. So they have on or off states. And you can, what's nice is then you can do like a sibling for a label, and then you can actually change the label color as well so that it fits with the checkbox for some nice visual identifiers. Disabled, styles applied to a form input that's disabled and unable to accept focus or content input. And so this would be if an input had an actual disabled attribute on it, then you can style that appropriately. Read-only is styles applied to an element that is not writable by a user. And so this would have the read-only attribute. And I don't know why, but the read-only class has a dash, but the read-only attribute is one word. Like it's like this little thing, but it took me a minute to like figure out when would you use this? You might put it on an input that relies on some other information to be filled out first, and then using some JavaScript, you can remove that read-only. A read-only element isn't editable, but the information in it gets sent when the form is submitted, where a disabled element doesn't have anything submitted and isn't editable, well, obviously. And then read-only elements can be focused when you're tabbing through a form, but a disabled element can't be focused. Read-write, you can probably guess what this is. So this is an element that a user can write to. It could be input that doesn't have read-only or disabled, and a text area that's neither read-only nor disabled, or another editable element thanks to content editable. So you read-write background, so your input type text, and then if you put content editable or equals true, you can style these even though I believe the support is still a little shaky. Valid is styles applied to form elements that have a value that validate according to the element settings. These aren't like super great, but they're better than nothing, I think. So valid, if you add background green, you're filling out the email, then in theory it turns green. But you see from this GIF, I think it validates like then without a .com, so valid support through most of the browsers except for your old IE8, IE9. Invalid, you can probably figure out, so this is when the value doesn't validate accordingly. So we have it turn red until you successfully validate. Invalid has pretty much the same support as valid. Right, and then you can use these in conjunction. So most people when they're typing don't like the input jumping back and forth to them with colors and statuses and such, depending on the scenario. So what this does is basically input valid. So we're going to write those valid rules when it's not focused. So when the user has left the input, we can give them the correct response. And you can do the same with invalid. Required or styles applied to form elements that have the required attribute. The required attribute matches the actual class. And then, I mean, this is kind of a bad example of just border left, but you can style, if you have a bunch of required or you have a few required, you can style them appropriately. Required has pretty much the same support as valid as well. Optional are ones that are optional and don't have a required attribute. So if you have 10 inputs, 9 of which are required, you're probably better off styling the optional as optional than throwing 9 required elements at someone. But again, that depends on context. Indeterminate, so I thought this was a weird one. It seems that it styles applied to a checkbox when it has a third state that's based on JavaScript. So checkboxes are either true or false, but then using JS you can add an indeterminate. And then it also applies to an empty progress bar. So I don't really get like how those two relate to each other. But, so this little minus thing would be your determinate state. And then just like our checkbox, you could look for its sibling label and then style the background like that. In range, styles applied to input elements when their value is inside the range specified. Right, so if you have an input type number with min 5, max 10, and you get it within 5 and 10, you can have it successfully give you some sort of visual feedback, so in this case border green. Support for this is good, except for in bold IE, but I guess Edge supports it, so depending upon your browser standards. Out of range, as you can guess, does the exact opposite, so when the value is outside of the acceptable range. So if we had the same example, when we put in 1, which is in between 5 and 10, then we can throw in the error. When you successfully put in 7, then it works. Same support as in range. Your placeholder, so these are styles applied to the actual placeholder text that's within an input. And from what I read, it's not in the spec, but it has pretty good browser support through some weirdness.
It is in selectors for where we have it written.
It is? You heard it here first. So today though, you can do it via these vendor prefixes, and then the placeholder attribute is to give your user some sort of context of what to do. Support for it it's getting there. Placeholder shown is coming up, I believe, in the next one, and it has some support now as well. So placeholder shown is a class, not an element. So the placeholder is an element, this one's a class. This is the parent of placeholder, so this applies to the actual input that has the placeholder applied to it. So if you wanted to style your inputs that had placeholders differently or access them for whatever reason, you could use placeholder shown. Support for that is pretty terrible at this point because it's still in development. All right, so layout items. So you have first child, so these are styles applied to the first child element of its parent. So if we took a simple paragraph, so our first paragraph, first child, it'll give us this, welcome to first child's demo, it's the paragraph. Last child is styles applied when the element is the last child element. And so if it's a legal or footnote copy or something like that, then you can style it appropriately. Only child is when styles are applied to an element that is the only child of its parent. And I believe this could be the same as first child, last child, if they were chained together. And so this could be, maybe you have like your section and you have stories that line up in a 2-column grid, and then if there's only one story within a div, you want it to take the full 100%. This is a case where like Flexbox or something might be better, but it's nice to know that you have like an option like this. So you have your 2 stories, and then you have your only child div that goes 100% width. Your first of type, so this differs in that its styles apply to the first child of a particular type, rather than just the first child under a parent. So modifying the previous example, if this got changed and there was a H1, the H1 is now the first child, but we want to style this paragraph, so it'd be the first of type. So we want paragraph first of type, and then that allows us to still style that intro paragraph right away. Last of type is pretty much the same thing, but it starts from the bottom up. So if you had this legal content and you were looking for last child, it would actually target this anchor, but we want the last paragraph. And so then you're still able to style your legal footnote, but then when legal put in the call to action button, it doesn't totally blow up. Only if type is the same thing, so we're looking for the only child of a particular type. So again, taking our previous example, say our story gets a caption of some sort or some sort of metadata put below it. If we had only child, that div would no longer be styled with that. So by using only of type, we can still style that div, and then it has the caption below it. So we're not totally screwed. You could use not on your only of type if you wanted to. So if the majority of them were full width, and then you had a few that were 2 columns, this might make more sense. But again, using a class or a flexbox would probably be more performant in the first place. All right. Mchild, so these are styles applied to selectors based upon their source order. So starting off with an easy one, so nthchild 3 is going to look for our 3rd element. So if we have a list, it's going to find 3, and then say it renders in our boxes, it styles or targets the 3rd one. You can do this with odd, so 1, 3, 5. You can also do it with even, so 2, 4, and then continue. And then you can add n. So n starts at 0 and basically counts up until it can't find any more matches. So this would be 3 times 0 is 0, so there's nothing. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. And then if it continued on, 9, 12, etc., etc. 3n plus 2 is the same concept. So 3 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. And then if it kept going, it'd be 3 times, what was the last one? 3 times 2 would be 6, plus 2 would be 8, and so it would continue on in that manner. You can do negative. I haven't found a use case really for this quite yet, but I'm sure they're out there. But so it'd be 5 times 0 is 0, minus 3 is negative, so it doesn't match anything. 5 times 1 is 5, minus 3 is 2. 5 times 2 is 10, minus 3 is 7, and so it will calculate on from there. Cool. And then you can do. What? Did I miss something? Oh, all right. Making fun of me. Okay. That's fine. So you can do it to count backwards, basically. So your negative n plus 4 would start at negative 0 plus 4 is 4. Negative 1 plus 4 is 3. Negative 2 plus 4 is 2. And then negative 3 plus 4 is 1. So you're able to count backwards from a specific element. You can also count forwards. So 0 plus 5, 5. 1 plus 5, 6. 2 plus 5, 7. You get the general idea of that. You can also do it to specify ranges. So if you did nchild n plus 2, it'd be 0 plus 2 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 2 is 4. So you have a counter going that way. And then chained to it, you have the negative n plus 6. So 0 plus 6 is 6, negative 1 plus 6 is 5, negative 2 plus 6 is 4. So you have another counter coming the other way. So you have a starting point and an ending point, or you have a starting point and an ending point, depending which counter. And so this will take any elements that work within that counter space. Make it even more fun, within those counters, you can throw another nth child and just pick out the even ones. So you can go from basically number 3 to 6, but then only style 4 and 6 because they're the even select. Nth last child, we'll do it's the same thing. So it's the source order starting from the bottom. So if we did nth child 3, it would have been 3, but this is nth last child, so it's starting from the bottom. So 1, 2, 3 gives us 5. And then with this stuff, you can do, you start to like quantity queries if you want. So in this one, if nth last child 7, so starting at the last one, working your way back up 7, is we chain first child onto it. So if your 7th element is also your first child, we know that there's 7 elements there, and then we can style that appropriately. This could be helpful for maybe some table data, or if you know that navigation is going to be changing over time, and you want to style with how it will look with 4 items versus with 5 items. If that will change the context, you can use a quantity query like this for that. And then you can select all of your elements by finding your first quantity query, and then using the sibling li, and then you're able to style all those list items appropriately based upon that quantity. And then if you use last child n plus whatever number, you can start to see if there's a minimum of X amount of numbers. If you want to design something that starts with a minimum use case of content. Nth of type is like nth child, but it's the source order and the element type, so it's more specific than nth child. You can do all the same counting. I figured I'd save the math for that one portion rather than keep going through it. And nth last of type will do the same thing. It starts at the bottom and looks for a specific type. So if you have a div with a bunch of paragraphs and image tags and other items, and you only want to target the paragraph tags, you can work through that way. Target or styles applied to the active element that is targeted with a fragment identifier or a hashtag. So say you have something that's like div display none, and then when that div is targeted, you can display block it. And so as a prototype, we did this, so you were able to go through different panes just using some CSS. Scope or styles applied within the parent element of scope HTML. So this will be like within the actual HTML. You can have the style scope block. I don't think you need the scope and curlies. I think you can just write CSS in it. This might be good if you have quick changes within a CMS. That could also lead to a lot of disaster. So I think this is one of those that I don't have a good use case for right now. It's just nice to know.
But there's a really good use case in JavaScript if you're using query selector all with the CSS selector, and say you want to get like only the child of the current element or only the immediate sibling of the current element that matches the selector.
Yep.
Because then you can actually scope in that case refers on the element that you call query selector all on. So that's really useful, because otherwise if you just do a child selector, you'll get all of them.
Makes sense. Brad, thank you.
Also, if you're doing templating with like smaller components,
Yep.
just to like keep it there, kind of like how we're using this stuff.
Oh yeah, makes sense. So if you're styling smaller components, to keep those styles scoped within those features. Cool. Thanks. Looks like IE doesn't support it. Give or take, spreads. Root styles applied to the highest level parent element. So typically in HTML, that's an HTML selector. This has higher specificity because pseudo-classes have the same as regular classes. In SVGs or XML, it could be different. So I believe that's when this becomes helpful to use. Empty are styles applied to elements that have no children or white space, but they can have comments in them. So in this case, if we had hello world, that's not empty. Div, there's no white space in this one, so it's empty. This one has some white space, so it's not empty, so they would be styled as so. In the future, what I understand, might be getting has. So this is a relation pseudo-class that represents elements whose relative scope selector match when elevated or evaluated absolute. Basically, that what means is it's looking for child elements, and if that parent element has a child element, then we can apply correctly. Am I wrong?
Has is amazing, and yes, it does exactly what you said. And yes, but the problem is
we're not getting it, are we?
we're not getting it in CSS. No, browsers are saying that it's too slow to implement, as usual, even though authors have been requesting it for years. So we're only getting it in JavaScript. We'll be able to use it in query selector and query select all, but not CSS. Not for now, at least.
Well, it's a bummer, but at least we are.
I know, I love this.
Yeah.
I really wanted it in CSS.
I worked so hard on this one slide.
It's your best slide. Too.
Yeah, right? Well, then, is this one Will? Don't answer that, I'm just kidding. So, hopefully not. Currently, we can add one selector within its parameters, but supposedly we'll be allowed to add multiples. So if we were taking that external link, instead of doing not, chaining not, we can just set the year domain that we want internal. So it makes things just a little bit cleaner. Matches, so this will take an argument, select a list, create sets of selectors by entity groups. Basically, you can do matches, section, article, A side, H1, and that would be pretty much the same as doing section H1, article H1, A side H1. So you can style classes or HTML elements based upon their parents, and then you can group all of those together. Local link, so this allows you to style website internal links. So with this, then you could possibly do not local link, and then you can have your external link styles. What I like about this is that you can style specifically to the depth of the link. So, local link or local link 0 will do your .com, and then local link 1 would do the next depth in your URL year. 2 would do your month, and then ideally 3 and 4 would go on and on. I don't know an actual use case off the top of my head for it, but I thought it was a really great concept, and I'd like to see it, hopefully. And then some other ones that I had found that I figured I wouldn't go into because they're probably going to get scratched or pushed out for later. So direction for languages. So I believe you can either detect or switch which direction the language is going in. Okay. Then you've got like current, past, and future for some of your video time-based ones. Spelling grammar or spelling error, grammar error for some of your user entries or mistakes that you can throw errors at them. And then I believe drop will be to help with drag and drop items as well. And so that's pretty much it. So I'd like to say thank you. A lot of resources, so there's no way that I just know this knowledge off the top of my head. I use the collective internet to find that, or find this stuff. So feel free to go in and check my work and get back to me and let me know what I missed or what I didn't get right. And then if you want to try, I created a little pseudo puzzle on CodePen, and so we'll put these slides up online later. But it basically has a set of rules on how to style this form without adding any classes or markup and just using pseudo elements and classes, just so you can get a chance to try some of it. I'll post an answer on Twitter and I guess on the meetup probably like end of day Friday. But as you work from this, please tweet it at me so I can see how people are doing, answer questions. If there are questions just in general, please get in touch. And otherwise, thank you very much.
Does anyone have announcements that they want to make? If you want to get hired, if you have a job posting, Dockyard, which is one of the sponsors of Boston CSS, is hiring for CSS developers. So if you'd like to work at a web consultancy that does design through development, you can come talk to me.
I do have one announcement, a small one. So,
You can stand
okay. Hello. So, does this work? Oh, we turned it off.
Here, I'll turn it.
Okay. Sorry. No. There you go. Yay, and it works right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're doing a user study at MIT about making it easier for people to create web applications. So we're looking for people who know HTML and CSS, but either a little JavaScript or no JavaScript at all. So if you're interested in participating, it only takes like an hour of your time, maybe an hour and a half. So I'll be around afterwards. Let me know. Thanks.
Is anyone, I don't think I need much, is anyone, has anyone installed SSDs in your computer to replace a hard drive, and therefore you had to go from the hard drive to the SSD and make it work? If anybody's, okay, I'll catch you afterwards.
I'd also like to say Vermonster is hiring CSS devs. So we're always looking for talented people. So if you're interested, talk to me anytime. Thanks. Anybody else? Okay, we're gonna hang around for a little while if you want to talk to us or the speaker or all of you. So continue eating the pizza and drinking the drinks. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.